Good day, I'm Administrator Adam Southgate, and today's lecture will be covering the Abrahamic spheres Penyd. I'll begin today with a question. Can good truly come from suffering, and if so, is it justified? Now, I do not mean the word in terms of what modern-day people would call suffering, but rather what our medieval ancestors would think of when they heard the word. As in suffering passed down by a divine figure being able to bestow absolute joy or bottomless despair. Suffering that strips away the pretense and the mask of who someone wants to be seen as and leaves behind only the quivering remnants of who they truly are. This is what today's entity confronts us with, but before I get ahead of myself, I'd like to mention the Order's Discord to help keep our hunters organized. It's broken up into different roles based on rank and which Earth you belong to, if any. Along with this, we conduct our contracts through this system, so I hope to see you all there. Now, onto our Hunters update. Firstly, you may be aware of a small group of Iron Cult members that recently entered Wales from England. The group was small enough that we could have simply wiped them out, however, we saw an opportunity in this situation. The plan was to create our own fake Iron Cult chapter, then pressing our claim upon Wales, expelling the newcomers who would then tell others that Wales was claimed. Hunters Alex Beauchard and Henry Clade took on the task of the Iron Cult deception. The details of what they created must remain hidden for obvious reasons, however, I can disclose some of the events that took place during the meeting. Welcomed into the disused Victorian processing plant this new group were using as a base of operations, while dressed in the regalia of their created fake cult, the two were introduced to Brand, the leader of this small splinter group. The meeting initially began rather promisingly, with Brand and his followers not showing any sign of aggression, and even offering the two a meal. However, it was during this meal that Hunter Henry Clade noticed that each of the followers were perfectly mimicking Brand's facial expressions. Pushing ahead, the two attempted to press their own created cult's claim upon Wales. However, Brand, with a worrying lack of concern, explained how none of this mattered, as he was the chosen avatar of the Iron God. Now, the two, knowing that the actual avatar is currently within Order custody and receiving developmental therapy, pushed against its assertion, remaining in character, asking for proof of Brand's divinity. Without a word or sign of communication, one of Brand's followers threw themselves from the rafters of the building, falling to their grisly death. Horrified, the two continued to push their objections, however Brand and his followers with the same eerie smile appeared unperturbed. Brand proclaiming that the two would soon join his flock. At this, multiple of the followers grabbed the shoulders of the two hunters. Alex spun and ran his dagger into the hand of the one who grabbed him, ripping it through and bisecting the hand, while Henry swung his weapon wildly to push the attackers back. Henry, free of the cultist's grip, leveled his rifle and fired into the head of Brand, spraying brain matter and unidentified metallic components over the floor. As it turns out, Brand had created two Iron Cult augmentations. The first was a transmitter that he had installed within himself, while the second was a receiver he had installed in his followers, taking away their autonomy. The victims, free of his control, all of which were Iron Cult members from other chapters across England, recounted how they had been kidnapped and involuntarily implanted with this technology. Thankfully now freed, all of these members wished to return to their original cults across Britain. However, before they went, the two hunters impressed upon them that Wales was claimed, and any attempt to move into their territory would be met with the most extreme of violence. So thank you to Alex Beauchard and Henry Clade for taking on this task and safeguarding Wales. Secondly, we are trialling a Metallics hunter training program. As we've been seeing success with the training program built around the Dragon Kin, a proposal has been put forward to do a similar program for the Metallics. Indeed, while their strength is on a similar level to a human's, their durability far outclasses both our own and that of the Dragon Kin. There are of course far less of the Metallics, but many of their number have expressed interest. They do have some rather high hurdles to leap over, however, as all their senses come from the bardic transcriber-like device attached to their backs, which is far more fragile than they are. Interestingly, some of their number have found that they appear to be able to control in some limited fashion where the device floats in the air, reducing this weakness. We were reluctant to accept this proposal initially due to their small number, but this fear was put to rest and a new fear created after the revelation that they are able to reproduce, as several have already become pregnant. So this program may be beneficial simply to keep them busy and reduce the risk of extracurricular activities. If things go ahead, we will be looking for several masters to take on metallics as apprentices on a trial basis while we construct a more robust training program suited to their specific needs. If this goes well, it could lead to somewhat of a renaissance for the Order's hunters as we eventually transition to a 3-species coalition of humans, dragonkin, and metallics. Sadly for the last two, they will never be able to rejoin normal society, living solely within the Order's custody, but they will have the satisfaction of safeguarding that society. Whether or not this program goes ahead really does depend, however, on how open the hunter community is to this change. To gauge this willingness, we will be holding an open poll that we hope you will take part in. The Abrahamic sphere, like the Eldritch, is essentially unknowable. However, like the Eldritch, we are able to ascertain some details through theoretical anomalous mathematics, historical record, and legend. The sphere itself does not represent any one of the Abrahamic faiths. Instead, it attempts to represent all of them simultaneously as a kaleidoscopic paradox. We do not believe that the sphere itself is the faiths it represents, but rather an accidental and twisted imitation, with much of the humanitarian aspects completely lost. There are, within this sphere, the greater beings that have no interest in man, lesser beings that are obsessed with man, and those somewhere in between with only a passing fascination. Today's entity, the Penyd, falls within this passing fascination category, along with many other entities of this sphere. Typically, this category of being, while not looking to directly affect the lives of all mankind, will intercede with singular people. This can be done out of a misguided benevolent intention, or can be done out of a straightforward malevolent one, with much of the time it being difficult to distinguish between the two. Much of the problem distinguishing between the two comes from the entity's propensity for overcorrection. It is as if your friend came to you bemoaning the fact that they do not get enough time to spend with their family as they spend far too much time working, and so, to aid your friend, you remove their legs so they are unable to get to work. You have technically solved their problem, however misunderstood the underlying reasons the problem existed. The Abrahamic entity's actions are far more abstract, of course, and it can be difficult to understand what they were attempting to achieve. However, typically, if you dig deep enough, you can find somewhat of a reason for their actions. It begins with guilt. The level of guilt does not appear to factor, only that the guilt is present and prolonged. One day, the person suffering this guilt suddenly and without no obvious cause is freed of this burden. The initial cause will still remain, however, the emotion is no longer there. For a time, all is well. The person lifted of their guilt continues life with the weight removed from their shoulders, and then it begins. On either one of their limbs or their torso, a perfect band of skin around 10 to 20 centimeters thick will begin to feel warmer than the rest of their body, though only to them. The victim may not even have noticed that this has happened for some time. However, as the days wear on, this feeling grows in intensity, moving from a gentle warming to a stinging burn. They may at this time seek medical attention, however, there will be no obvious cause for their discomfort, with no visible sign upon their body of anything being wrong. The doctor, at most, may prescribe a topical cream. This treatment will provide no relief, and in fact, as time goes on, the discomfort will turn into pain. Victims have described it as a burning sensation in the most literal of terms, as if their skin is actually on fire, and this is only the beginning. As each day passes, the intensity of this pain only increases, with no relief to be found and again, no outward symptom ever present. The sharp and stinging nature of the pain makes rest of any kind impossible, wearing on the victim's psyche. We have found examples of sufferers accidentally giving themselves frostbite on affected limbs, attempting to find some kind of relief to no avail. There are those who have quite literally flayed themselves, believing that what was causing this issue was beneath the skin. And there are those victims who have purposely and laboriously removed affected limbs, with those few who survive finding to their horror that the sensation is still present, though seemingly now floating in mid-air, similar to phantom limb syndrome. This ever-present and inescapable pain creates within the victim a sort of manic energy where their only goal, their only overriding thought is finding a way to alleviate their suffering, though nothing short of death appears to help. All the while, and beyond conventional understanding, the pain continues to increase far past the point where stress and shock should render them unconscious. However, even this relief is robbed of them. Those affected are unable to find rest in any way, however do not appear to suffer the effects of sleep deprivation, always remaining in a state of full wakefulness and alertness, their minds suffering all the while. What's fascinating is that this effect alone is not fatal, as no physical damage is being done. What makes this such a dangerous affliction is the toll it has on the human mind. Victims will almost certainly fall into destructive behaviors in a desperate attempt to find a way to alleviate the pain. Some we've already discussed with the self-mutilation, but along with this there is also substance abuse and the most immediate escape. But despite all of this, the affliction is survivable, and it is possible to eventually even recover, though you will not be the same person you were when it began. The entire ordeal will completely run its course after exactly 40 days from when the symptoms first showed, suddenly and for no discernible reason vanishing as if it was never there, but also taking something with it. While yes, there are the obvious effects the condition has upon the mind that are left over after the affliction has run its course, there is also the fact that those who survive are left without the ability to feel pain. This is both in the physical and emotional sense, as these people, while still being able to express emotions such as love and joy, are no longer capable of feeling sadness, anger, or guilt. We are unsure if this is a planned aspect of the affliction or a human response to the trauma that was the last 40 days. The Penyd themselves do exist within our sphere, or at least an aspect of them does. To most mundane humans not in the know, they will appear as the most average people imaginable in almost every regard. Not a single of their physical features will stand out enough to be noted, easily disappearing into a crowd never to be seen again. However, with the use of tools such as the MMB and the Angelus Pluma, their true visage can be revealed. A truly androgynous form with no primary sexual identifiers and loosely resembling the image of mankind, they glide above the ground in a dreamlike fashion. Their skin possesses no pores, indentations, or marks accumulated through a human's life, while coming from their backs are multiple feathered arms that seem to pass through one another in an eerie, intangible way. Their legs are thin and slender and do not appear to be capable of supporting their own weight, and each end in, instead of a foot, a simple point. Their faces are both beautiful and alien, with eyes larger than is seen amongst man, and hair made of feathers. Through observations of these entities, we have witnessed how, for the most part, they do not interact directly with humanity, simply observing from amongst us, impassively watching us as we live our lives. It is only on the rare occasions when they take an interest in an individual that they will make direct contact. Again, as stated, the person must be experiencing prolonged guilt. This, for whatever reason, draws the Penyd's attention, and they will slowly approach, a look of almost concern upon their face. From the victim's perspective, they will most likely not even notice this perfectly average individual walking towards them, even when this pseudo-person places a hand upon their body. It is only for a brief moment, less than a heartbeat, but the Penyd will brush a hand against the person's body, a look of profound empathy on their face. And we do not know if this supposed empathy is due to what they are going to inflict or out of a genuine sympathy for the guilt the person is feeling. After this contact is made, the Penyd will move away, returning to its typical behavior of almost people watching. However, interestingly, if they come across the victim again, they will follow them for a short time, implying some kind of memory on their part. Still, the unanswered question that even today causes fights amongst researchers is why these entities are doing this. Even now, we only have theories. But how does one hunt a Penyd? Well, firstly, as stated, equipment such as an MMB is definitely required, otherwise it's basically impossible to identify them. Secondly, you will want to have eldritch rounds, which you can check out from the order, though remember, each are catalogued and must be recovered after the contract. A large issue when hunting Penyd is that they only appear around crowds, making a simple confrontation far more problematic. However, we have found a workaround. So, thirdly, bringing a used MMB other than the one you will have linked to yourself is essential. The device must be as close to breaking as is possible to have the emotional turmoil it is experiencing be wide-ranging and intense enough. This will naturally draw the Penyd towards this near-broken MMB as they seek to remove their guilt and inflict pain. This then leaves you with two separate strategies, one of which will be contingent on your relationship with the police and local government. If you have standing you can draw upon, you will be able to have the area cleared out, allowing you to engage the entity where it is. If you are unable to do this, you can attempt to lead the Penyd away from the area to a more secluded spot where your confrontation can begin. Fighting the Penyd is an exercise in fast maneuvering. After your aggressive intentions are made clear with the first shot, the entity will attempt to dive towards you in a sweeping arc. If contact is made, the same burning effect will be afflicted upon you, however, over a much larger area and without the slow build-up. While an MMB can dull this effect, allowing you to observe the pain as if from a distance, even then it is so intense as to be debilitating, and you will need to use MMBs constantly for the next 40 days until this effect has finally run its course. The main advice that more experienced hunters would give is to always keep your eye on the entity, never letting it out of your field of vision, giving you the ability to anticipate its movements and dive at the appropriate times. It should take 20 to 30 shots of eldritch rounds to finally take down the Penyd. I find the Penyd fascinating because they may actually be attempting to help people. Physical and emotional pain stem from the same area of the brain. However, unlike physical pain, emotional pain has a multiplying effect upon itself. So, it is possible that these beings, believing that emotional pain is in some way more real than physical pain, choose to help by transferring the emotional into the physical. But because that physical pain acts as emotional pain would, the pain begets more pain until eventually reaching some kind of conclusion. This is only my own loose theory and does not explain many of the aspects of the affliction that we see, such as the loss of ability to feel negative emotions once everything has finally concluded. Clearly, more work is needed, but that will be all for today. Please like, comment and subscribe. With Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom. Thank you.